The plenary of the Chilean Constitutional Convention recognized with 100 votes in favor that Chile is a plurinational and intercultural state. In Belgium, Western heads of state and government began on Thursday a marathon of meetings in the city of Brussels to coordinate their action against Russia. Authorities in Somalia report more than 30 people dead in a double attack perpetrated by the jihadist group Al-Shabaab in the city of Beledweyne in the center of the country. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Dio Martin. From the TeleSUR studios in Havana, we begin with the news. The plenary of the Chilean Constitutional Convention recognized on Wednesday with 100 votes in favor that Chile is a plurinational and intercultural state, which supports the right of native peoples to self-government and autonomy. The indigenous people in Chile make up 12.8% of the population, but they have never been considered in the Constitution in spite of the fact that the 1993 Magna Carta recognized 10 native peoples. Many consider that their inclusion in the constituent process repairs a historical debt. The former president of the convention and representative of the Mapuche people, Elisa Loncón, stated during her intervention in Wednesday's session that the recognition of the indigenous people's rights is also a recognition of their capacity to design their future.
Regarding clarifications made by the reserved seats, self-determination in my language, Kisun and Igun, is the right we all have to decide what we want for our people, for our communities, and we've never had it from the state. We have exercised it in the communities to the extent that we have been able to, and because of Kisun and Igun, one day we decided to make the wenophobia, and the wenophobia is flattering everywhere. It is the elementary right of the peoples to think about their future, and this has to do with the minimum standard of human rights in terms of self-determination and participation of the indigenous peoples, an issue that has been expressly recognized and endorsed by specialized international organizations. For example, the report on the rights of indigenous peoples by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has pointed out that the right of indigenous peoples to political participation is related to the right to free participation.
In Peru, former President Alberto Fujimori will have a hearing this Thursday, March 24th, in a court presided by the Superior Judge Miluz Cacano to analyze a request of the Public Ministry for the case of Pativilca. The senior prosecutor Pedro Orihuela asked for 18 months to prevent Fujimori from leaving the country due to a judicial process known as the case of Pativilca. This case was known as a practice of human rights violations planned by the institutions belonging to the executive power. In response, thousands of people have demonstrated to demand the annulment of the ruling that reinstated Fujimori's pardon so that he can serve his 25-year sentence as indirect perpetrator of the murder, among other crimes. The United Nations organization has declared on the case that the decision to pardon the former president is a setback for Peruvian justice. In Venezuela on Wednesday, President Nicolás Maduro called for an increase in national production in order to boost the country's exports. Speaking at the inaugural of the Sheep and Goat Expo Fair Miranda 2022, Maduro emphasized the importance of increasing production in the country to ensure self-sufficiency, but also to boost exports. The president said that Venezuela is making headway in this regard, saying that exports projects will spawn from associations between national and international companies.
And our second challenge is to become an exporter of food to the world. And at times of crisis like right now, the world may turn their eyes on Venezuela, come and buy food from us. And to that purpose, we're making national alliances with communes, with small, medium, and large producers. We're also setting up international partnerships with people who want to come to grow produce in our land. We should advance on those two objectives and with the 9 pillars of the great Agro-Venezuela mission.
And in Panama, several popular movements expressed their rejection to the presence of United States troops in their territory. Troops from the U.S. Southern Command will be carrying out what they referred to as humanitarian joint exercises with the Ministry of Health and the National Border Service. The Panamanian government announced in an official report that from Thursday until April 1st, the joint Mercury 3 maneuvers with troops from the U.S. Southern Command and units of the Panamanian Air and Naval Service will take place. The drills are reportedly aimed at reinforcing the response capacity in case of a natural disaster in Panama. The troops will be deployed in the town of Sambu in the Imbera indigenous region in the heart of the Darien jungle, close to the border with Colombia, a route more than 133,000 people have passed through on their way to the United States, according to figures from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Several social groups, as well as political leaders and activists, have repudiated the presence of U.S. troops in the country, and they have accused the United States of violating the sovereignty of the country by entering the Enrique Malek International Airport with weapons. Now moving north in the Americas, on Wednesday in Mexico, the Chamber of Deputies of the Congress of the Union accepted to create a friendship group between Mexico and Russia, despite the claims of representatives of citizen movement and the absence of deputies from the Party of Democratic Revolution and the National Action Party. In the course of the event, Russia's representative in Mexico, Ambassador Victor Coronelia, thanked the administration for not applying sanctions against his country, despite the conflict situation in Ukraine. During the meeting, the Russian ambassador highlighted that they respect the position of Mexico.
We respect very much the decision demonstrated several times by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and by the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Marcelo Ebrard, that Mexico will never join the anti-Russian sanctions, and that despite the requests of the government of Ukraine, it will never supply weapons to Ukraine. I want to assure you that I have no doubt that what is happening these days will not affect in any way the relations of Russia with Mexico, and that it continues to be one of our oldest and most important partners.
And the Executive Secretary of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our Americas People's Trade Agreement, known as ALBA-TCP, Sacha Llorenti, met with Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel in Havana. The Cuban head of state ratified in the meeting his government's willingness to support the progress and development of the alliance and to defend unity against attempts of external interference. During the exchange, the parties reviewed achievements of this mechanism of political coordination, as well as the actions planned for the period ahead. Other issues of the international agenda completed the dialogue. Sacha Llorenti thanks Cuba for its contribution to ALBA-TCP and for the frequent support of Havana to the Bolivian claim to its sea axis.
On this occasion, I want to highlight the permanent support of the distant countries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our Americas. To our Bolivian cause, I want to remember Fidel's words, who several years ago said that, yes, I am going to paraphrase. He said something like, if there was a geographic possibility, Cuba would give it an outlet to the sea.
Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness said on Wednesday on the occasion of Prince William and his wife Kate Middleton's visit that the country is considering assuming their full independence and discussing unresolved issues. This came after a demonstration demanding compensation for the damage wrought by slavery. The representation of the British Royal House arrived in the country 4 months after Barbados became a republic, months after they removed the Queen from the position as sovereign head of state. In the wake of the situation, Prime Minister Holness said that Jamaica began to consider this new possibility. He also assured that as Jamaica moves forward, they intend to achieve an independent, developed, and prosperous nation. The meeting took place amid demonstrations at the headquarters of the British High Commission in Kingston, the Caribbean country's capital. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, and welcome back to From the South. In Belgium, Western heads of state and government began on Thursday a marathon of meetings in the city of Brussels to coordinate their action against Russia. The Belgian capital hosts NATO, G7, and EU summits to be held throughout the day, all of them featuring a video conference intervention from Kyiv by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. During his first speech, Zelensky asked Western leaders for an increase in arms deliveries, including fighter planes, defense systems, and anti-ship missiles. The White House also informed that this Thursday's meetings seek to consolidate the sanctions arsenal already imposed, prevent Moscow's attempts to bypass them, and reinforce NATO's presence in Eastern Europe. Russian Ministry of Defense issued its latest report on the special military operation in Ukraine, which began exactly 1 month ago today. Russian Defense Minister spokesman Igor Konashenkov confirmed the Russian troops have taken control of the city of Izium in the Kharkiv province. He said Russian aviation had targeted 60 military facilities, including 2 command posts. They also destroyed 2 drones, 13 surface-to-air missile launchers, a missile depot, and artillery weapons in Bakhmut in the Donetsk region, as well as a deployment point of Nationalist Battalion. Konashenkov said Russian military experts have discovered new evidence proving the involvement of the United States in the development of biological weapons components in Ukraine. The Russian Ministry of Emergencies delivered on Thursday 400 tons of humanitarian aid to the people of Donbass and Ukraine. The Russian department explained that the cargo contains food, basic goods, and building materials, and that more than 50 vehicles from the Donskoy and Noginsky rescue centers make up the humanitarian caravan. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk claimed that last week that Moscow had used humanitarian aid as a bargaining chip to ask Ukrainian troops to leave Mariupol in return of the aid. The emergency ministry has reiterated that since the beginning of the special military operation launched by President Vladimir Putin in Ukraine on February 24th, Moscow has almost weekly dispatched humanitarian aid to that territory, in addition to strengthening and protecting the corridors for evacuating the civilian population. Russia is interested in resolving humanitarian issues in Ukraine, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said at a meeting in Moscow with the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Peter Maurer.
Now, as we see at the United Nations, our Western colleagues are doing their best to politicize humanitarian issues as much as possible, to give them an anti-Russian character. This was confirmed by the vote yesterday on the resolution presented by Russia, the approval of which would actually allow solving many problems on Earth that, among other things, the team of the International Committee of the Red Cross is facing in Ukraine. We are interested in solving problems which are now accumulating in Ukraine, so that artificial obstacles to the evacuation of civilians and the delivery of humanitarian aid are removed. I know that you were in Kyiv on the eve of your visit to Moscow, and I hope that we will be able to achieve progress today in a traditionally concrete manner, concentrating on humanitarian tasks without any politicization.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on Europe and the world a few hours ago to unite against Russia and to put pressure on Moscow to seek peace. The president sent the message on his Telegram account to the world a month ago, this March 24th, from the beginning of the Russian operations in Ukraine, after reviewing what he called acts of terror carried out by the Russian troops. Zelensky said the war is not against Ukraine, adding that Russia intends to defeat the freedom of all people in Europe and the world. The Ukrainian president had criticized a few days ago NATO and the European bloc, holding them responsible for the conflict for not admitting his country into the alliance when he requested it.
Show your standing. Come from your offices, your homes, your schools and universities. Come in the name of peace. Come with Ukrainian symbols to support Ukraine, to support freedom, to support life. Come to your squares, your streets. Make yourselves visible and heard. Say that people matter, freedom matters, peace matters, Ukraine matters.
On Wednesday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed that the war in Ukraine is a global crisis by virtue of the impact it is having on energy, food and fertilizer markets and the great risks it poses for all countries, especially for the poorest. Guterres had already assured on previous occasions that no country can spare itself from a collapse of the global economic system, a collapse to which he claims we are heading if the conflict in Ukraine continues. Guterres said the domino effect of the hoarding of fuel and food products or the long-term impact of the increase in poverty will affect each and every country in the world. And although he acknowledged that there are clear signs of shifting from the battlefield to diplomatic negotiations, he raised the alarm, saying that a war like the one being waged in Eastern Europe now is madness and that it'll only leave losers.
Continuing the war in Ukraine is morally unacceptable, politically unsustainable, and militarily absurd. I said it here almost a month ago, and by now it should be clear to all, even by the most astute calculations. It is time to stop the fighting and give peace a chance. It is time to end this absurd war.
The United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee unanimously approved on Wednesday a bill proposed in February by a group of congressmen that requires several agencies of the United States government to report on the risk of Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador for the U.S. financial system. Known as the El Salvador Cryptocurrency Accountability Act, that regulation requires the United States government to report the risk that Bitcoin adoption might empower actors defined as malign and cites as examples China and organized crime worldwide. The document further explains that the State Department will be required to coordinate with the Treasury Department and other federal agencies to examine and mitigate potential risks. As soon as the news broke, the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, used his Twitter account to respond to the legislators' decision. In the United States, the Miami Beach County declared a state of emergency and imposed a midnight curfew through the weekend. The measures came after two shootings in recent days that injured 5 people. The curfew, which began on Thursday and ended on Monday, and is to end on Monday, runs from midnight to 6 a.m. each night. Businesses in the area will be closed and restaurants will be open for delivery only after that time. Essential services will not be affected, and residents will still be permitted to leave and arrive at their homes. Miami Beach officially declared the state of emergency and imposed curfew after 2 shootings in 48 hours. Plans for the curfew and state of emergency were first announced on Monday in the wake of 2 shootings in a 48-hour period that injured 5 people in total. City officials will meet again this week to decide on extending the curfew. We have more news coming up after our final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. In Somalia, authorities reported more than 30 people dead in a double attack perpetrated by the jihadist group Al-Shabaab in the city of Beledweyne in the center of the country. The attack left more than 30 people dead, including Federal Deputy Mina Mohammed, and at least 35 people injured who were taken to Mogadishu for medical attention. The first attack took place in the vicinity of the Lamaglat military base, and the second was carried out in a nearby hotel where local politicians and election officials were staying. The Somali Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble strongly condemned the terrorist attack claimed by the jihadist group. In a groundbreaking ruling, a court ordered the South African government to reduce air pollution in a coal mining belt ranked by Greenpeace as the world's most polluting compound. Mpumalanga, which borders Mozambique, is a hub of South Africa's coal industry and boasts 12 coal-fired plants. According to global environmental group Greenpeace, the air in that region is the most polluted in the world with record levels of nitrogen dioxide. Local environmental groups Groundwork and Vukani in 2019 hauled the South African government to court for violating the constitutional right of citizens to breathe clean air. The organization said air pollution caused between 300 and 650 premature deaths in the region in 2016, and exposure to toxic materials emitted by those coal plants has resulted in an epidemic of asthma, bronchitis, and lung cancer.
So this is a groundbreaking decision that's been handed down by the Pretoria High Court. It revolves around the very unsafe levels of air pollution on the Mpumalanga Highveld, a region in the northern part of South Africa. And the court declared that the very, very high levels of air pollution on the Mpumalanga Highveld are a breach of Residence Section 24A right to an environment that is not harmful to the health and well-being. It is the first time in South African law, constitutional law specifically, that we've had an order from a high court of this nature. So it's a very big moment. So this is
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrived in Kabul on Thursday, a week before Beijing hosts a meeting of Afghanistan's neighbors on how to assist the Taliban government. Even before the Taliban seized control of the country in August, Beijing had sought to maintain ties with the group as United States-led foreign forces withdrew. However, like other countries, China has so far not officially recognized the Taliban government. So on after this arrival, the Chinese diplomat met with his Taliban counterpart Amir Khan Muttaqi. Wang arrived in Kabul from Islamabad, where he attended a 2-day meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Since the exit of the former U.S.-backed administration, Afghanistan has been further plunged into financial and humanitarian crises. According to the United Nations and other aid agencies, more than half of the country's 38 million people are facing hunger as the winter drags on. Rescuers have been fighting the rain to clear landslide debris and waterlogging while expanding the search and rescue area at the site where a passenger plane with 132 people aboard crashed in South China's Guangxi Autonomous Region on Monday afternoon. Waterlogging on the site made it quite difficult to walk on the muddy and slippery mountain slope soil. Rescuers had to lay bamboo frames on the ground to facilitate the rescue work. This Thursday, the first human remains were found under the debris. The first black box from the plane, which is believed to be the cockpit voice recorder, was recovered on Wednesday and sent immediately to Beijing for decoding. The rescuers used professional equipment to detect the underground area of the crash site in an attempt to find the second black box that recorded flight data. All these search and rescue operations are carried out under the guidance of civil aviation experts. We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on the website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I am Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.